Welcome to Deal Nation, where we tap into Launch Control's nationwide network of investors, coaches, and strategic partners to find out what's bringing in deals and how we can all work together to build generational wealth. We're joined today by Bryan Driscoll, founder of Motivated Leads, all-around industry expert, and a great guy to get advice from at any stage of real estate investment. So, Bryan, welcome. Great to have you.
What's up, Michael? Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I joined your guys' podcast a while back. Happy to be able to get you on to talk to our audience. First place we always start is origin stories. Like, tell us how you got involved in real estate investment and kind of a light jump ahead to how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, sure thing. So I got involved in real estate back in 1998. My dad took me to, those seminars that the guys used to travel around the country, and you go to the seminar and they sell you in the back of the room.
Yeah.
So I went to them. It was Ron LeGrand. He was here in Pittsburgh. So I go to the seminar. My dad's there. I'm all hyped up. At the end of his thing, he gave me the pitch. You go to the back of the room and give him, it was $1,800. So it's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
I gave him my credit card and I got into real estate. And I started marketing. And what the strategy back then was, you put ads in newspapers. So I started doing that, followed the process, and I failed miserably. Like, I had a lot of people calling me. I didn't know what to do. So it's like, I didn't know what to do, just failed. So that was my first introduction to real estate. So I did that, failed, and then I didn't do anything, right? But I always wanted to do real estate. So I was just working my job. And then about 10 years ago, I got back into it. I found out dealing with a wholesaler and got back into real estate, bought a property, bought it, fixed it, and burned it, turned it into a rental property. And that's how I got back into it. So it's like I got in 98, and then 15 years later, the knowledge I learned then, I was able to reuse and actually do it the proper way.
Guys, ads in newspapers, that's a new one. I hadn't heard that far back. You think there's a chance for a comeback for that? Like an analog, people putting ads in newspapers and getting callbacks from it, or is that just all the way in the past by now? You
know what? It's funny. I just tested it out 6 months ago. So I hit up the newspapers in Pittsburgh. So I was curious at the same thing. So I put the same ads in. I got one call. So
okay.
Anything works if you do it consistently. So I'm sure if you did it consistently, it might work.
Yeah.
But I was just curious. I'm like, I wonder, because who reads newspapers? Older people, older generation.
I'm thinking anything that falls into that free and clear, over the age of 60, looking to high equity situation might work for newspapers.
Yeah. So I tried it. So I hit up the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Pittsburgh Trib Review, the biggest ones in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And put it in all their papers. It was cheap. It was $120 or something. Yeah. But it didn't do anything. I only ran one. It was a 6-week thing. And
worth
anyway,
a shot, though.
I to check out.
I love the juxtaposition that you went from starting off by placing ads in newspapers to now being a digital marketing guru for the industry. That's quite a growth trajectory.
Yeah.
So how did you first really start making the transition from, because I know you've closed a lot of deals personally. I know you're still closing deals. So when did you go from being just really REI centric to getting the bug and getting into the marketing side of things?
Yeah. So what happened back in the early 2000s, I got involved with digital marketing. So I got involved with marketing first. I started on a platform. It was called Odesk, which is now Upwork.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So I was I was in the way early stages, right? So I was on Odesk and I started freelancing in SEO. So I did that. I was charging $20 an hour. And then I'd get busy and I'd keep raising my price. And that freelance turned into a business. It's called Think Big Marketing. So what I did was I started doing SEO for e-commerce companies, lead generation, things like that, just a general agency. So I did that for about, 10, 15 years. And then I got into real estate and I paid a wholesale fee. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'll bet you I can generate my own leads, because my background was marketing on a national level. Real estate's on a local level. So it's way easier. So that's how I segued into marketing with real estate. It was just kind of fell into it, because I had a need.
Yeah. And so when did Motivated Leads come to fruition?
Yeah, we started Motivated Leads at halfway through 2020, right before COVID.
Okay.
Yep.
It's a fantastic name. I find myself like accidentally using it in conversation all the time, where I'll say, you know, what you really want is you want high quality, motivated leads. I'm just plugging Bryan all the time
Yep.
because it's a great name.
Yeah,
Uh,
I forget how I came up with it too. Because I'm familiar with the industry. It's like,
yeah.
wow, that's available. So I grabbed it, and that's what we rolled with.
Oh, that's a no-brainer if you can get it. Yeah, it's a
Yep.
great name. It's perfect. But yeah, I mean the idea behind it, like what you just said, like you thought about it and said, I bet I can generate my own leads. And it's something that I think is overlooked a bit in the industry, because we have, at Launch Control, we have people that often are coming in as newbies in real estate investment. And one of the biggest barriers to entry for them is they'll look at someone that is running a big 7-figure shop, and they've got an army of VAs, and they've got, 4 acquisitions reps, and they're big time. And their marketing spend is crazy. It's $50,000 a month, and they're in TV, and they're doing text marketing, and they've got a cold calling branch, and they're doing it all, right? And that person who has, zero money because they're looking to just close, a handful of wholesaling deals over the course of the year, they see that as marketing as being a real barrier to scalability, right? But as you and I know, there are a lot of ways that you can do this for free, right? Like
Yep.
organic SEO is free. Social media, with the things that you promote on social media, is free. Content that you put onto YouTube and build up an audience is free. So there are there are free CRM tools. There's a lot of freebie stuff that you can do to start to kind of generate your own leads and have your own, as you say, motivated leads. Because when you get someone that raises their hand and they're like, yeah, actually, I do want alternative options, those conversations are just so much easier. It's such an easier starting point. So can you maybe kind of spin off on that a little bit of, the kind of leads that you guys are delivering, and like what the flow of those conversations tends to be? Because I think that, the definition of a motivated lead and what it's like from an investor perspective is good information for the audience to have.
Yeah, sure. And just to elaborate on what you're saying too, I think anybody starting out, go pay with the sweat. Like, go knock on the doors. Go, like,
Yeah.
Don't go spend money on marketing. Like, when I got into business, I had to learn it and do it. Anything I do in business, I have to do myself first, and then I can outsource it. So I see a lot of people just getting into business. They'll take their savings and spend it on marketing without knowing the process. And then you're out of business because you didn't learn it yet, and you're looking for the easy way out. So it's like, it's like, what kind of suck do you want? You want it to suck now or suck later?
Yeah, no, it's the same for us. I'm sorry to cut you off, and then I'll
you're good.
let you answer the question that I asked. But we have the same issue where a lot of times people will come in and they'll use Launch with the idea of like a spray and pray method. If I'm just going to send out as many text messages as I can, see what comes back. But where we see the most success is when people are very strategic about it, right? Even if you're sending a volume of messages, if you're sending a volume of messages in a market that you've done a ton of research, you know what all of the comps are, how many properties are going wholesale, how many properties are going subject to, what the competition level is, you've got, some marketing already in place so people can find out more about you if they need to find out more about you. If you've done the base foundation work and then you send out text messages with that foundational knowledge in place, the success factor is through the roof different, right? And the same is to re-lead into the question I asked. The same is true when you can get a true motivated lead for people that are looking for solutions.
Right. So here's what I see as a motivated lead is, in my opinion. I want to find people that have problems, that own real estate, that I can help them with. Like, everyone looks at the actual house, and what I consider the motivation is the person and their problem. Like, they might have inherited a home. Think about this. Say we got John. He's got working 9 to 5. He's paycheck to paycheck. He just inherits a house. Everyone thinks inheriting a house is great. What if this place needs like 50 grand at work? and he can't fix it, and he's got to pay the utilities and things like that. It's like he now has a problem. So the house is not the problem. The house is just an inherited home. But John now has a problem because he can't afford to pay his bills and fix his place. So he needs somebody to help him, and it's in too crappy condition to put on the market. So when I look at motivated leads or motivated sellers, it's like hoarder houses or people that inherited a home that have a problem. Just different. It's mainly the people and their problems, and then you come in and help them solve a solution, create a win-win, and you make some money.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, and it's a difficult. I won't say it's a difficult skill, but it's a really important skill to be able to look at any given situation, like you said, like look at the house, and then ask the question, who's the person behind the house, and what do they need, right? And it's something that we try to teach people when they're coming into the platform is to reduce the I and increase the you, right? Because if you're going in with your messaging saying I can do this and I need that, that is not solving a problem for a homeowner who is in need, right? Like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. How do you get them out of that place, right? So if you're going in more with a you mentality and you're able to start offering solutions and letting people know how you can provide unique solutions from the beginning, really good chance of building trust, right? Really good chance of breaking through and then getting what in the end will be a good real estate deal. But you have to make a good human connection and a good, have a good person-to-person solution in order to unlock that real estate deal, right?
Right. And have some empathy. Like you figure someone that's going into foreclosure and has a family feels like a piece of crap already because they're letting their family down. So you have to have empathy. It's not just a deal. This is like a person.
So how do you have, because this is a problem I think that most real estate investors are trying to crack. How do you have empathy but also volume, right? Like having empathy, you knock on someone's door, you're walking around the neighborhood, you're at deal one, you knock on someone's door and you have a conversation with them, you know the neighborhood, you can see what's going on with the house. It's easier to have empathy in that situation than it is when you're trying to scale from 20 deals a year to 100 plus. So how do you have empathy at volume?
Well, I think it comes more down to the acquisitions guy in the conversation. It's more the conversation. So it's more the conversation when you're talking about, okay, what's your situation? Let's build rapport, things like that. Versus I know a lot of guys just go in and start talking directly about the house. It's all about the numbers. It's just a business deal. So I think the empathy comes along whenever and if you're scaling too, you probably have a team of acquisitions guys. That's when it comes down to like your team culture too. It's like, okay, does everybody care about people, or are we just gunslinging trying to lock down deals? It depends on how your company's built, But I think it's mainly just in a conversation. Could even be just over the phone.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's important to kind of seed empathy early, right? Because what I see a lot is when at the cold call level or at the text marketing level, it's very gunslinger. It's like looking for the low hanging fruit, trying just as quickly as possible to get someone onto a phone call. But the empathy and the charm don't really start until discovery call starts, and then it's different, right? Then it's well, what do you need? What got you into this situation? And the empathy comes through in that more extended conversation. But the earlier you can seed that empathy, the earlier you can start to build trust. And text marketing is one of the ways that you can do that, right? Because got their captive attention, they're creating a threat, you're creating a thread on their phone, they're able to loop back to it and see that you were at least had some interest in providing solutions for them. It can be very useful from the start.
Yep, 100% agree there.
Yeah, so I think that as organizations, as they build out this scripting, there are ways that you can like in the app we see one of the things that we track is actual conversation rates, right? So not just how many people responded, but how many times do we get to like a third or a fourth interaction in a single thread, because that is an indicator of a discovery call being booked. So that's an indicator of genuine interest. And we're seeing those numbers on the rise, which in the system, which is great. And a lot of that reason is what we're talking about now, is kind of getting people to try to be much more seller focused, even in text, before they get them onto a call, because in some ways, if they're replying to a text message, they're already motivated to a certain degree, right? Like they answered that text, they took the time to interact with you. So you really do need to treat it like a motivated lead. See, here I go, branding your company for you. But you really do have to treat it like a motivated lead, even at that early stage, and not just, gunsling it to a phone call and then let Bryan Driscoll come in with full charm and empathy 3 steps in.
Right. And you know what? I see it too, because I get text a lot just from like I own properties.
Yeah.
Don't send a stupid text message. It's like, think about it too. It's like whatever list you're sending to, like think the text message through a little bit. So it makes sense for me, because you're shotgunning, but it's like, think about what type of situation the people on that list may be in and craft your text to that. So there's a little bit of a connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. So like if you, for instance, are a multi-property owner and they know that, and you're out of state and they know that, that's an investor to an investor conversation, right? And there's a way you want to approach that, as opposed to like, somebody's grandfather that owns a home in Florida and you want to send. That's a different approach, right? Someone that's in pre-foreclosure and needs assistance in the next 60 to 90 days, like that's a different approach, right? So really segmenting it down helps. And also like getting down to the neighborhood level. If you can target, specific neighborhoods, or another thing that we suggest often is find out what your buyers want and then go out and look for that and speak to those homeowners directly based off of what is going to sell on the back end.
That's really true too, because then you don't have the problem of finding a buyer. It's like you go, I know if anyone finds a house in Bethel Park, I'm going to buy it.
Right, exactly. Like I've often said this, but like if I wanted to go into like heavy into fix and flip, into fix and flip right now, the first thing I would do is I'd find out who every wholesaler was in that market, and I'd make friends with them, because that's a simple pipeline, right? Like I don't even have to do anything to find properties; they're doing the work for me, right? And so I'll pay a little bit of a premium in order to just have properties handed off to me. If I just had to sit back and wait for a text to come in, and Bryan sends me a text, hey, I've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath available in Oak Park Estates. You want to take a look? I'm like, yes, I do. And then I get a text from another wholesaler. Do you want to take a look at this property in the whatever other area of the neighborhood? Yes, I do. That's a passive way to go about, running a fix and flip business. So like preloading those relationships, I think is really beneficial for both buyer and wholesaler.
100% agree there. I like buying from wholesalers because they already did the work.
They did the work, right? They prepped the homeowner. Well, the homeowner doesn't know that you're going to be involved, but like,
right.
They went through the homeowner's motivation. They got a fair number that the homeowner agreed on. All you have to do is make a quick sideline deal with the wholesaler, move on, and do what you're going to do with the property. It's easy business, So from a wholesaler perspective, I think it's a really good idea to really nurture buyer connections before you even go out and find the available houses. You're filling gaps in buyer portfolios and guaranteeing results on the back end. Like it's an easy win for both, So with motivated leads, what are you guys seeing in the market? Are there any recent success stories you can share of investors who have turned some really good deals from working some of the leads that you guys have teed up for them?
Yeah. So well, first, what we do, we generate leads on a pay per lead basis. So we work with investors that obviously want to get deals, wholesalers, flippers, guys doing innovations, things like that. One guy I was just talking to, his name's Dustin. He's in Pittsburgh. He has a 5x ROAS with us, right? What he does a lot of flipping, buys crappy houses and flips them. I was actually just talking with him too. He said, and this is interesting too, on a follow-up game, he just closed a deal, a large deal, it's what, July 18th right now. The lead came in October 2023.
Oh,
So
wow.
a lead came in, they were motivated, but they weren't ready. He stayed in front of them through text and email, ended up locking down the deal, and it made massive profits on it. So it's different things like that, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, someone wants to sell now, or they get a lead and they think they need to close the deal this week. Some people don't close for 6 months. It's like you need to get their situation, see what it is, and then try to help them out. You know what I mean? But yeah, I work with a lot of clients. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, what's your advice on that from just a real estate investor perspective on essentially how to tier your leads once they come in? Because where I think that the vast majority of the business happens is at the point of desperation, right? Where people know that they come to the realization that MLS isn't going to work out and they're not going to come up with the cash, and so they need a quick solution. And most people kind of live and breathe in that like post realization of desperation moment, right? Whereas there are a lot of people, a lot more that fall into those consideration rings that go out a little bit further, right? Where they you want it on their radar early so that October 2023 deal can close now. So what's your kind of strategy for figuring out like who goes into that post desperation bucket, and then how to handle the leads that are a little bit further out?
Yeah, so I'll answer it a little bit different way, but so here's what I see. The most successful investors I see, the most successful clients that I have multiple dispo strategies. So they can wholesale, they can flip, they can do novations. A lot are licensed, so they can list on the market. So what happens is they end up having a conversation with the seller, and it's not, I can just do cash deals or I can just do one. It's okay, what's your situation? And then you got a lot of tools in your toolbox. You can help them solve it, right? So you're getting to the root of the problem with the person. It's like, you know what? I'm losing my house in 2 weeks. That's a person that wants it. You need to have a solution for them yesterday, versus somebody that needs a solution in 3 months. You can diagnose that too. So you're actually having a conversation and trying to find it out by talking with them, versus just assuming, hey, everyone wants to sell yesterday. I know out of 10 leads that come through our system, 6 want too much money, and then 4 of them end up being deals you may want. Guys usually lock down 1. So it's like the people that want too much money, if you can do novations and if you can list on the MLS, you might get a deal out of that too. If you're only a cash buyer, you won't. So you have to look at those also when you're looking at your KPIs and marketing budgets too. It's like, okay, how many leads do I need to get, and how quickly can I turn cash around?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think that, along with that, I think networking is important, because I agree with you that the most successful investors can dispo in 10 different ways, right? But for somebody that's just starting out, they're not going to be licensed. They're not going to have the financial ability to do some of the other channels, right?
Right.
But via networking, you can kind of JV your way there, right? So
Yep.
if like a subject to deal, right? Somebody coming in brand new is not going to know how to do a subject to deal, and that's fair. You got to learn your way there, right? But if you have a deal, you find a deal that's subject to worthy, you JV that, you learn how to get it done that way. You can start to add that to your resume, right? Or again, like going back to like buyer and realtor connections, some cases it's just a question of margins, right? Just because a deal doesn't fit the margins you need to get the profit structure you need out of it, doesn't mean that you can't get a piece of that, right? If it's an edge case that a realtor could potentially take on and actually sell MLS and give you, a fee for that, you still make a little bit of money off of it, right? Like,
Yep.
there are definitely ways that you can network your way to profitability if you're not ready to be multi-dispo enabled yet.
That's a really good point you have there too. You basically got to have a guy. It's like,
Yes.
I get a guy, right?
Yeah.
Because the seller doesn't care if you list it on the MLS or your buddy does. They just want their house sold. So it's like, if you're just starting out, make those connections. Go to the RIAs, find the guys that are good and ethical in each space. And when something pops up, they're going to help you out, and then you both win.
All right. It's like you said, right? Like we're people, problem solving for people, It's not about the house necessarily. You're not going to own the house. You're not going to put stuff you love in the house. You're not going to have memories in the house. You're going to get rid of the house. So it's really about problem solving for people. And if you can problem solve for people in which and you can find 8 ways to profit from that, there's nothing wrong with that. Because at the end, like you said, at the end, if the seller is able to sell their house and they're happy with the solution, and you profited somewhat from that by being the connector, you're still solving a problem. You're still profiting from that solution. It's still a win, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So in terms of marketing, I do want to get your thoughts on like just where you see the industry going in general. But in terms of marketing, because you're really close to things with marketing, where do you see marketing trending for real estate in the next year, 2 years?
So that's an interesting question. So marketing, I actually have a lot of people I'm hearing right now. People are saying direct mail is working really well. I think the tech space is going to keep growing and evolving. And it's a real finicky thing though, because for example, Facebook's algorithm, while it's smart, it depends on Facebook's AI and algorithm. I don't know how far you want me to go down the rabbit hole, but it's tracking basically your every move online.
Yeah.
So, and just to say it in a nutshell, say you're looking at a pair of shoes online. Facebook now knows that you are looking at those shoes, and then it shows you shoes in your Facebook feed to try to get you to buy them, right? Because Facebook, like, we are the product on Facebook, like they advertise to us. Yeah. So as marketers though, and as investors, we can use that to our benefit. So with Facebook and Google, things like that, their algorithms keep getting stronger and stronger and smarter, especially with AI, that they can see your behavior and they can tell who's likely to sell their house or want to sell their house and then deliver your ads to those people. So I think, to answer your question, I think the tech space is good, depending on regulations, because like in Facebook and Google, they're making housing network and it's harder to target. But as long as we can still target there and your algorithm's working, that's good there. I think text message is pretty decent, especially if you're starting out too, because you can get out there really, really cheap. I think all the channels are actually going to work if you do them consistently. Like you can just go knock on doors. If you do that consistently, you're going to get deals. But I do think it's going to evolve. If you want to scale, you got to get into the tech space and turn money into more dollars. You know what I mean? Like instead of trading your sweat, you got to trade some money.
Yeah, something that I see happens a lot, right? Is like 2 things that you mentioned: direct mail and Facebook, right? A lot of times in the real estate industry, there's a very, what I call, a versus mentality with marketing channels, and it's like, oh, direct mail is killing it right now, or Facebook's killing it right now, text marketing's killing it right now, and everybody gravitates in that direction. And what that ends up happening when you don't have consistency is that leaves major gaps when the tide shifts and it goes back the other direction, right?
Huge.
So and then now you have no presence in text, or you have no presence in paid ads, and when those start to have an upcycle, now you're playing catch up, right? Whereas the people that were consistent with it were seeing consistent results, and they know that if you look at it, I talked to Jason Lewis about this recently, and he was saying that they chart things over like a 12-18 month Gantt chart, basically, right? And as they chart those things, they see that there's a very, like, in each one of the channels, it's up and it's down, but every one of them produces over time. All right. And
right.
So I think the question often is not which to choose, but how to use them together. Right. Because I'll just use, motivated leads as an example. You get a lead coming in. This is coming in from digital marketing, but you still have to close that lead, and it's going to take multiple touch points to close that lead. So if you put it into a situation where you're pinning all of that to one phone call, maybe 2, that's a lot of pressure to put on your team. Whereas if you're using a call plus follow-up from launch control to create that open text channel, so that if they do have a simple follow-up question, they're not going to call you to ask a simple follow-up question, but there's a good chance they'll text you. right? If you have just a little bit of information that you want to drop after the call, and oh, by the way, kind of a bit of information, getting that over by text, it's going to get read. It's low. It's a low friction point for them. They don't have to be on another conversation that they might not yet be ready for. So having those multiple ways to interact with any given lead is going to exponentially change your ability to close those leads, right? So I really think it's about finding the strategy points or the crossover points for all of those different channels and trying to maximize that more so than choosing one.
Yeah, it's kind of like a chair. You have a 4-leg chair, pull one leg out, 3 are probably still going to hold you up. A prime example is this is an election year, right?
Yeah.
If you're running Facebook ads right now and Facebook's your only marketing strategy, your cost per lead is probably going to triple in the next 2 months because of elections in e-commerce hitting Q4. So it's like, okay, you need to have different channels working at all times to take those ups and downs, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, if you're remaining consistent and you do find those ways that they cross over, you're going to get increased ROI from that. And I actually think it's probably best not to immediately take those extra wins and buy more marketing, right? It's you really, the consistency is also a bit of it is just kind of being patient and letting those systems work, and take some of that freed up capital and apply it to other parts of the business, but just don't consistently scale up your marketing. Basically, like do it in a slow, tested, consistent way, and you'll get consistent gains from it.
Yep, speed kills.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like the equivalent of opening up a, I don't know, like a fast food franchise and then immediately opening like 15 more, and it was just too fast, right? Business collapses. You have to take it in stages. I was actually on a recent podcast we were talking about this of the two of the main motivating factors for people coming into real estate investment are, one, to kind of get out of the grind and have more freedom of time and freedom of schedule. And another is to just build a lot of wealth, right? And sometimes the sprint to build a lot of wealth kind of kills dream number one, and you end up just too caught up,
That's so true. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I could go work 80 hours. For real estate investors are hustlers. Like, we work a lot. It's like, you tell me I can't do that, and I'm just going to wake up at 4 a.m. and I'm going to work till 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And you lose the freedom.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's, balance, right? But marketing, it's the same kind of thing, right? You don't want to just chuck money at things. You want to make sure you have metrics, make sure you have, you're proving the success of each of them, and stay consistent, and you'll definitely get good leads and good deals out of it. In terms of the industry in general, like you've been in it since 1998. I've only been in it since 2019. So I'm kind of a newbie by your perspective, but I don't think that there's ever been 6 months of just relative calm. It's always kind of a hectic space. So, where do you see things going? But, that said, it always persists. There's always deals. There's always business to be made. So where do you see just the industry at large kind of trending in the next year or so?
I think it's going to change a lot. A lot of people are hating on wholesalers right now. So a lot of legislation's going through things like that. And I think you're going to have to adapt a little teeny bit. Right. And I think it may be good for the industry too, because there's I'd say 90% of investors are legit, above board, and honest people. And then there's a couple people that are just a little bit shady. So I think this is going to help those types of things. So you're going to have to adapt. But I think there's always going to be people with problems. So it's like so in our space, like interest rates, things like that, they affect us a little bit, but we're mainly dealing with people with issues. So there's always people dying, always people coming into hard times that we can help, things like that. So I think it's going to be good, but I do think you're always going to have your finger on the pulse and keep up with, for example, right now, some states you might have to get a real estate license if you want to wholesale or do things like that. So do it. You know what I mean? It's just like stay up on it. And then also, it depends on I think it depends on the election too a little bit here.
Really?
What's going to happen in the space with interest rates, things like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's like it depends on who's in there, what the interest rates are, because that heavily affects what happens on the regular market. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm as far as the negative feedback or negative sentiments around wholesaling. I do think and just my opinion, obviously, but I think it's a bit reactionary right now. But I also think that you nailed the two things that I think are going to be most influential in kind of righting the ship if this ship needs to be righted, which is empathy and diversification, right? Like it's the what can be labeled as a predatory kind of approach that rubs people the wrong way. Because you're right, like the need will always be there. There will always be people that need help out of financial situations, or that inherited houses that they don't want or know what to do with, that just aren't a natural fit for an MLS licensed broker model, right? And I think the more that we can build in an empathetic way awareness around the solutions that do exist outside of that model, the more that the profile of the industry goes up in a positive way. For most people that are getting messages from wholesalers, they've never heard of this. It feels a little, there's a trust barrier that they need to get past. That's any wholesaler will tell you that's one of the biggest challenges, is getting people to understand that this is legitimate and that this is a fair kind of alternative for them, right? So the more we can raise the profile of non-MLS, off-market, whatever you want to call it, real estate in an empathetic way, the more that the chatter kind of quiets down, right?
Yeah.
And then as a secondary thing, the disposition side, you're right. Like if all of your eggs are in the wholesale basket, it's more of a risk. But if you understand novations, if you understand seller financing, if you're willing to go get licensed if you need to get licensed, then your risk profile goes down, right? So anything that you can do to add diversification now, I think, is probably a benefit for anybody out there. And then just adding more of that human-centered approach to real estate, I think will be turn the tide.
I agree. And here, like you're saying too, people don't know who you are. So it's like, especially guys starting out, go make a credibility packet, which is just like it's like your resume for business, just to show people, hey, here, it's like an about me kind of thing. You know what I mean? Just even when you're going to meet sellers, toss a polo on, get your logo embroidered on it. You know what I mean? Just because in the space, it's like you're dealing with sellers. They don't know who you are. You just texted them out of the blue. They're like, oh yeah, I want to sell my house. And you show up, toss a polo on, give them a credibility packet, be professional, things like that. And then people will be a little bit more at ease and think there's not a catch. It's like lay things out, communicate it,
Yeah. I mean, how many wholesalers do you think there are nationwide?
I don't even know. I would say, I don't know. What do you think? Maybe 50,000, 100,000?
Yeah. Something like that. Right.
Yeah.
And how many motivated sellers do you think hit the market nationwide every year?
Oh,
it doesn't even have to be like super close, but just
hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands, right? If not a million, right? Yep. It's a big number. So hundreds of thousands, if not a million. But the audience that in the real estate investment industry that we tend to talk to is the 50,000. It's the, hey man, I did 15 deals last year. Or last month. Here's how I did 15 deals. And the badge of honor is always about deals done. And it's never or rarely about people helped. And right. and that's the million, or at least the hundreds of thousands, right? Yep. So I love what you said, credibility packet. I think that's what you called it. Like if part of that, in part of that is testimonials, essentially, like homeowners that you've helped, giving positive sentiment about the help that you provided. That's something that every business everywhere has, right? Like I need this from launch control. I need people to talk about how successful launch control has been for them, because it's called social proof, right? Yep. It's proof from people that are actually using the product. And as a real estate investor, what you offer is essentially a product. It's a solution to get out of a financial situation. And if you've got the proof of that concept, that can go a long way towards building trust. So if you're able to get that early into a credibility packet, like you said, it can be very helpful.
100%.
All right, Bryan. So I really appreciate you coming on. For anybody that needs help bringing in motivated leads or just really wants some good advice, connect with Bryan and his team. Follow Bryan. Like he's constantly dropping tidbits of real estate wisdom. I follow your emails. I read those every time they come in. Great little bits of advice. So yeah, connect with Bryan and his team. It's motivatedleads.com. That's up on the screen now. If you guys are watching this on YouTube or anywhere it's streaming live, if you're just listening in, we'll put a link to Motivated Leads in the description, as well as if you are not currently with Launch Control and would like to use the combination of Motivated Leads and Launch Control together, we'll post a link to Bryan's link for Launch Control, and that will allow you to sign up through his team and connect with both of us simultaneously. Bryan, anything else that you wanted to add for the Deal Nation audience before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I would just say one additional thing I see, especially with people that want to get into the space. Everyone tells me, even neighbors and stuff, hey, I want to get into real estate. I would say just do it. Take the first step. Just start doing something, and then you'll figure it out after. Just go find that deal. You'll figure out what to do after you get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Make the leap. I love it. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Pleasure coming on.
Sure thing.